Yes, well, I'm glad to be here. You know, I'm always picking on people. And so this morning, my focus, because she won't be here next week, is on the young woman we know as Rachel. I don't know about you, maybe it's just me, but every time I see her, she just lights up a room for me. She doesn't have to do anything except just be herself, and I'm just blessed by that. It's a credit to, I think, her personality, her parenting, and the presence of God in her life. I appreciate it and I give credit to God. And it's not to say that you all don't light up my room when I see you Sunday morning, but Rachel a little bit more so since she's gone. All these exciting things happening in her life. Anyway, we're going to finish up Samson today from the book of Judges, chapter 16, basically. We kind of brushed against this issue that I'd like to talk about today, or visit with you about for a moment or two, before with Barak. But Samson's another story altogether, and I want us to kind of brainstorm how Samson ended up. It's kind of a curiosity to me, because where else do you see Samson in the scriptures besides Judges?
Hebrews 11.
Hold off on it. Yeah, Hebrews 11. I want people to scratch their head a little bit. In the heroes of the faith, he's in chapter 11 of Hebrews along with Barak and all the other champions. They're true heroes. Guys who were consistent. But Samson? What I'd like to do this morning really is consider then, how is it that God sees, well, how is it? But what does God see in Samson that puts him on that rather esteemed list in Hebrews, but his record in Judges seems so sad? And so, before, I want you to chew on that notion a little bit, and the question I asked in our outline is, what does God see that we can't? The question is found in 3A of your outline, which is kind of smack dab in the middle. And it's not like I'm asking us to be divine, but I'm encouraging us to think and see in a way in which maybe we sometimes don't about people. God obviously saw something in Samson that commended him to the heroes of faith in Hebrews 11. Frankly, I'm wrestling with that. I don't, and that's what I'd like to look at this morning. What is there in the record in Judges that would help us to understand that he qualifies in God's sight to be listed in Hebrews 11? Let's begin with Hebrews 11. You don't need to turn there, but what it says here in Hebrews 11, verse 33, and the verses following, I've just summarized them there. Why are they listed? Those great men listed? Because they did a number of different things. Not an exclusive list, a partial list, but it's a good list to begin with. It says, through faith they conquered kingdoms. Okay, well, do you realize that Samson never led an army? Did he conquer a kingdom? Let's go on. Those heroes of the faith administered justice. They're not just talking about the judges, of course. In other words, there was a certain righteousness, holy morality that enabled them to judge with discernment, to sort things out. That was pretty important. Is there much about Samson that demonstrates that he has any kind of sense of righteous, holy morality? or just the contrary? Now this he did do, shut the mouths of lions. He not only shut the mouth of lions, he ripped it in half, and then ate the honey out of it, see? So, okay, he shut the mouths of lions. Okay, we identify with Samson there. However, if that's what qualifies someone to be a hero of the faith, we are all in trouble. Because unless we make a bear comparable to a lion, and we all go up to Lucy and Dick's house on some evening and wait for the bears to come out and feast on the seeds, bird seed. My concern there is Lucy doesn't turn into a bear appetizer herself. Their weakness turned to strength. Well, that's an interesting phrase. This is all descriptions of what these heroes of the faith did. Weakness turned to strength. He was already given an enormous amount of strength as a Nazarite. So maybe from birth, his weakness as a sinner was turned to strength as time went on. He was powerful in battle. Well, he certainly was that. He killed plenty of Philistines. Did he rout a foreign army? Not so much. But they were, in verse 39, that's a key phrase, they were commended for their faith. No matter what else they did, they were commended for their faith in God. And that's the apex of the qualifications, it seems to me, to be put on Hebrews 11's list. It is verse 39. They were all commended for their faith. So what I want to look at now is let's try and figure out, what did God see in Samson that we're missing? Or at least I'm missing. Now you may have this issue settled in your head. And that's, you could help us actually, that would be great. But I want to see in this chapter, where is Samson's faith for which he's being commended? So let's take it apart a little bit. We're kind of going to skip quickly over it. Let's first of all see what he did wrong. Let's turn to Judges 14, just to back up a bit. In Judges 14, now, you see, this rubs me the wrong way, what Samson does here. As a parent, obviously he's a brother in the faith. In verse 1 through 3 of chapter 14, and Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now the first question you have to ask yourself is, what in the world is he doing down there? There's an old secular vernacular word for that. We won't use it, but he's chasing women. He's chasing the wrong kind of women. And he came up and he told his father and his mother. Now, at least he told them. I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me to wife. Okay, sure thing. Somehow, I just don't think that's the kind of thing that's going to be happening these days. Somehow, I can't see Eli go into pastor and say, I went down to New York City and I found me a cutie pie. She doesn't believe in God, but I want you to figure out how to get her for me. I think pastor would have read him to ride at and took him out back to shed. Just doesn't. It's not supposed to be that way. Now, children can make their own choices. That's one thing. That's bad enough. But it's compounded by the fact that he makes this demand of his parents. It's like it's a done deal. You see how it's put? Now, therefore, I like her, I want her, therefore go get her. Excuse me, you're the kid here. Now, I don't know how old he is here, but he's still the child. He's the son. Son doesn't talk to his parents that way. Not without getting the dressing down at the very least. Somehow I can't see that happening in a faith family. It does. And then his father and mother said unto him, it tells you this is not an isolated incident in his life. It's a pattern. Is there never a woman among my people that thou goes to take the wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well. So you see the parents are trying to have some good influence, but it ain't working. Samson's made up his mind. He wants a chick down there in Timnah, and he's going to get her. And Mom and Dad, you're going to help him. This is the kind of child you see on Dr. Phil. If you watch that at all. I can see Dr. Phil leaning over and saying, now. And the parents completely befuddled to know what to do with them. So, in this first example, and I'm beating on him pretty hard here, obviously. I'm trying to point out some of the things that don't resonate with me in a person who's commended for their faith in Hebrews 11. Is there something in here that would tell me that Samson has a chance of being listed in the Hebrews 11 heroes of the faith? I think there is. Anybody have a thought?
He kept at it.
He kept at what?
He kept at it. Going after the strange woman.
Well, yes. Quite the contrary. He continues to sin by going after her. And as you know the story, it doesn't stop there. It's one woman after another. But there is hope. There is a glimmer here, I think.
Because it says that because of the Lord wanting me.
Later on it says because of the Lord. That phrase can be interpreted a number of ways. In other words, God didn't make him choose a foreign woman. But God, in a sense, permitted that and then used that poor choice to God's good purposes. That's, very often what happens. Like with Joseph. Gets thrown down a well, taken off to Egypt, horrible life until he rises to power. And what does God say about it when his brothers come back? He says, I've lost my train of thought. He says, what the enemy intended for evil, God used for good. And so that's my thinking in this direction with Samson. I might be wrong. It's my understanding how that would work, but he knows everything. He knew Samson was going to be this kind of way. So it seems like Samson's going the opposite way of God. He knows that. Do you think he knows better than to marry a foreign woman? Is there consensus on that? Should he know better? How would he have known better than to go marry a foreign woman? Because of his parents. There's the glimmer of hope. There's the first thing. Sure, the parents have met with the angel of the Lord. They told him what to do, raise him as a Nazirite, yada, yada. But here's the deal. He has godly, faithful parents. I don't think you can underestimate the power of godly, praying parents, or aunts, or grandmothers, or cousins, or sisters, or whatever. I don't think you can underestimate that. Because in verse 3 he says, the father and the mother said, why aren't you content with the boundaries that God gave us? That's what they're really saying. You know better. You shouldn't. God told us not to marry foreign wives. You know better. Why can't you be content with the boundaries God has given to you? Now, what do you suppose that did to his parents' heart when he charged off with us? What would it do to yours? Hurt like ridiculous. Some of us may have had that kind of an experience where our children should know better, but they go that way instead of God's way. God forbid, but sometimes it is true. But the glimmer of hope is the foundation of faith that the parents have in their trust in God. I think that's a huge deal. When he refuses parental counsel and instruction, and then demands of them to be complicit in his sinful pursuit, that's pretty bad. Linda's right. In verse 4, the father and the mother did not know it was of the Lord, and he sought an occasion against the Philistines. That's a little complicated to me, but as I said, I think God knew what he was going to choose. He didn't ask, he didn't make Samson choose. He knew Samson's heart, and he knew Samson would choose in this direction, and he was going to use Samson's poor choices to accomplish an end. I'm not sure I can adequately and satisfactorily explain that, but maybe you can. Maybe you've heard a better explanation, quite frankly. But God is sovereign. But what bugs me about this, there are a couple of things. The other day, God bless Eric, I talk about people in this church. I do. He heard I aimed for a woodchuck on the way home from church one day, and I hit that woodchuck in the road, and I got him good. He did. I hate woodchucks. You know, the woodchuck got me back.
Good. I can't stand it when people try to hit an animal.
It was a woodchuck. Do you know what woodchucks have done to my barn?
I don't care.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me talk about Eric. So I told Eric, my truck is broken, the tie rod is broken. Well, I didn't realize it was broken. I drove my truck. Now, this is a miracle. There's no way this should have happened. Wow, you'll understand it. The tie rod end is broken right off my truck. It's dangling on the ground. I didn't know what it was. I said, well, let me see if I can still drive it. I drove it 3.5 miles home. There's no way you should be able to drive a vehicle with a tie rod end broke, is there? You ever hear such a thing? I never heard of such a thing. Tires just go fall right over and wreck everything out front. Well, anyway, Eric heard about it. Of course, I tell Eric everything because we're always teasing each other, and he's laughing at me. Oh. Well, Wednesday, I'm here, and my phone rings, and it's Eric. Eric, he says, Pastor, where are you? I said, I'm in church. He says, well, where are you? He says, I'm at your house. I said, what are you doing at my house? He says, we're going to fix your truck. Well, I had it all jacked up. I had a good de-ruster on the threads and everything, and I worked on it 2 hours on Tuesday evening or Tuesday during the afternoon. I couldn't get the thing fixed. I tried everything in my power. I tried wrenches. I tried pipes. I tried heat. I tried everything. I even tried, the last resort for a mechanic, prayer. So he shows up, and I said, okay, I'll be there in 15 minutes, which means I was close to exceeding the speed limit on the way home. But of course, I would never speed, right, Babs? And, well, not much anymore. But, so I get there, and it's pouring down rain at my house, and there's Eric standing in my tractor shed, his head sticking out the door. And I'm yelling, Eric, what are you doing? He says, I got bored. I said, well, why don't you go in the house and have some sloppy Joe from what left over from Benjamin Mops? No. I get there, and I said, well, okay, the rain stopped. Let's see what you can do. God bless you. He says, well, do you have the new part? I said, yeah, I have the new part. Well, he says, if you give it to me, I'll put it on and we'll be done. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I already got it all taken apart. How'd you do that? I don't know how he did that. I don't know how he did that.
You had all this stuff for it.
No, I don't think I did anything good. Why did I even tell you this story? Lord, you can tell when you're getting old and you forget where you were going. Men of God, yeah. there is and I pick on Eric because I think he's one of the finest men I ever knew. But he is a servant. You can tell that he has a heart for people and a heart for God. He's just that way. I mean, you don't have to ask him. You can just be talking about something, and the next thing you know, he'll show up at your house.
Yeah.
And he's never, he teases me, but he's not rude. But this guy is arrogant. This Samson, seems to me, in those first 3 verses, is just arrogant, rude, insistent. But yet, verse 6, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent the lion as he would have rent a kid. That doesn't mean to go to rent a center, it means to torn apart. And he had nothing in his hand, but he didn't tell anyone what he'd done. The Spirit of God is still upon him. How is that evident? It's a peculiar thing. We continue on here. In verse 8, he touched the dead lion. Okay, it's a lion, but it's still dead. You're not, if you're a Nazirite, you don't touch dead stuff. You don't touch dead things. So he's violated one of the primary tenets of being a Nazirite. Verse 11. He goes down, verse 10, he goes down to the woman, and Samson there made a feast. So he used the men, for so used the young men to do. And it came to pass when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. I would suggest, verse 11 suggests that Samson didn't have a lot of close friends. These are just sort of random guys. One thing you can tell about a godly man is he has godly friends. Or women. I mean, women have godly women friends. Or if you're married, and you're a godly woman, you should have a very godly man when you go down. You already know that. And if he isn't, then you don't partner with him. Be your equal in every respect. In fact, there should be gifts and strengths that complement those that we don't have.
I know that it's very considered or what, but I heard an Italian Catholic, and he went forward and accepted Christ.
Amen. You betcha. Doesn't get any better than that.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. I just had to say,
Oh yeah, I'm glad you did. Isn't that a joy though?
yes.
When we get partnered with someone who is on a spiritual same playing field, same page as we are, we can have conversations. I think of Joan and Pastor. They must over the years have had some most intriguing conversations. And I'm suspecting Joan held her own. I know Babs has. But she's also been a good sounding board. And, yeah. But I don't think from verse 11, I don't think these 30, it says 30 companions, but the word that's really used is just 30 guys. They were going to stand up with him, have a party with him. And they were like, hey, we're having a party. You want to come on over? And they showed up. I don't think these are guys who had said, you understand what I mean when the reasoning behind this, is that these are 30 guys that didn't say to him, hey, Samson.
You think they were chasing them to do?
Yeah. If they were godly guys, they would have said, hey, Samson, you're Nazarite, but you're Hebrew, and guess what? You're not supposed to be in this. Sometimes it's hard to be a friend when you have to call into account your friend's behavior, his actions, but that's what we're supposed to do. In grace and love, but speak the truth nevertheless. He doesn't have anybody in his life like that because, and here's my reasoning, is that because he's rejected his parents' counsel, what makes us think that he's going to listen to another person's counsel? He's going to reject them too. But I don't see these 30 companions saying, hey, this is not a right thing you're doing. Pursue a Hebrew woman like you're supposed to. They're plenty pretty enough. Why does he have to go the other direction? In verse 19, and I'm kind of skipping the stone across the pond, despite the fact that he keeps going down this track of sinfulness, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Still God's Spirit is upon him. Isn't this the most fascinating thing you ever see? A guy who keeps making wrong choices, and yet God's Spirit is still upon him? How's that possible? Don't you think God would say, that's it, Samson, you crossed the line. Samson doesn't seem to get across the line with God. And God sees something in him, despite his willful sinful choices. We find out in verse 19 that he's angry at those same 30 guys. He blames them for all his problems. And then the woman she married, I think this is ironic. Don't let this happen to you, Rachel. It says, but Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as a friend, so-called friend. In other words, he married this Philistine woman. Events transpire. The father of the woman says, oh, you disappeared, Samson. I gave her to one of the guys. Oh, what a catastrophe. We can go on. Let's just quickly go. In chapter 15, in verses 3 and 7, we find that most of his motivation is revenge. It isn't holy, righteous anger, but it's revenge. How is that godly? I don't get that. And verse 14, but still, the Spirit of the Lord was upon him. God is faithful, even when we're not. Amen? That is just so cool. And then he slays all these Philistines with a jawbone. It's still from a dead animal. And it's probably still a fresh jawbone, according to several commentators. He sleeps around in chapter 16. He's taken in by another woman. And by verse 20 of chapter 16, let's look at that. This is really interesting. Finally. And she said, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he woke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. And he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. Obviously, there was a lie. You know what led up to that? You know, Delilah's trying to figure out where his strength comes from. Finally, he gives in and tells her. But at this point, he says, God left him. Uh-oh. What happens when the Lord departed from him? Well, we know that he's captured. His eyes are gouged out. He's used as a mockery, a source of mirth by the Philistines. And then in the end, of course, he pulls down the house, the temple, where they had him tied up to kills thousands of Philistines. But killing thousands of Philistines doesn't really seem to me to be a credential for being commended for your faith. Any insights quickly in the few minutes we have left of where is this faith of Samson's? What am I not seeing? Yeah.
I think he had a thief on the cross experience there at the end when he was brought low and humbled, and he prayed to God.
Okay.
And that was his faith.
Yeah. What's anybody think about that? John, you're nodding.
Yes, that's my thought, is that he may have started out in youth, but then he went his own way. But in the end, God brought him back to himself through the needy experience. And God was using him, because sometimes he uses us in ways that we don't feel come up to what there is a need for that circumstance to be, because God is working to punish other nations or whatever. And
Kind of makes us wonder a little bit. It's right up until where the verse says that God, the Spirit of the Lord, departed from him. Where would Samson ended up if the Spirit of the Lord hadn't been with him up until that point? His name might not even be mentioned. But God was up with him up until that time, preserving him from maybe even greater disaster. But let's look at his prayer. Ed has, in my opinion, hit the hammer right on the head. The prayer toward the end of chapter 16, verse 28. And Samson, now look at the words that are used here. Called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee. Only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Now, I still got this revenge motif going, but look at the words that are when he addresses God. There are 3 different Hebrew words, and I've given them to you in item D in our outline. There is Jehovah, existing God, the self-existing God. So he acknowledges and affirms, finally, you've always been, you are now, and you always will be the eternal God. First, he affirms that, God's eternality. He uses the word Adonai, L-O-R-D, all caps, sovereignty over everything, including men. That's a pretty huge deal. And then thirdly, he uses Elohim, God, the all-powerful. He takes in some of these the 3 words that characterize God. And it is, as Ed has just shared, it is a suggestion, at least from here, is that it's like a thief on the cross experience. He finally says, my eyes are gouged out. I'm tied up to these 2 pillars. Here I am. You are who you say you are. And with that, God gives him enough strength to collapse the whole building. Can he be commended for his faith? I say yes, on the basis of that one verse, verse 28 of chapter 16. It seems like a long, hard journey Samson traveled to get to that particular verse. But isn't that the point of our lives, how God carries us along, that he loves us enough, he'll even be with us when we make bad choices. He won't totally abandon us. And we're always ready and willing on his part to come back and say, you are who you are. I believe you. Remember me. Isn't that what the thief on the cross said? Remember me this day when you're in paradise. Oh, it's a, God bless you.
It's allergies.
I thought it was maybe my hairspray.
I don't see anything.
Anyway, one of the things that I list in the last item there, maybe there's more to a man than the flaws and sins that are obvious, and that's true, isn't it? Every man who gets married needs to say this truth to his bride. That there's more to me than just my sloppiness. There's more to me than just my carelessness. There's more to me than just my own interest. There's more to me than just my snoring. There's more, that there's something going on inside that is important. That's what wives should nurture in men, and men should nurture in wives, of course. But I think this is the beauty of who the character of God is, that He sees into the heart of man and woman and says, but I know who they are, who they want to be, who they could be, and I want to help get them there. In the end, Samson returns to God, and God helps get him where he's going. Just an interesting thing. Samson's just a fascinating study. You can spend a long time there. But a neat guy. It means if there was hope for Samson, there's got to be hope for me and Marla. So, more. Let's pray then. Thank you this morning for your grace toward us. We thank you for Samson. We thank you that you remind us through Samson that you are sovereign and always faithful. Amen. What a way to live with that truth in our hip pocket. It never leaves us. It never changes because you never change. And you are always true. And you cannot lie. And you have promised to be with us always. So we thank you for Samson. I thank you, Father, that he is commended in Hebrews 11 for his faith, even if his faith comprises, in our best lights at this point, one verse of Scripture. It is that one verse that commends all of us in faith to believe that God is eternal and His truths are immutable. We thank you for that faith that you have put into our heart. Help us to nurture it and help it to grow. For we ask in Christ's name. Amen.